I don't know how it actually happened, but I'm modeling lightsaber hilts for him now, and they're actually working on the first concept. I call it Concept One because it sounds like a cool car.
Yeah.
And it's getting close to manufacture or production time. So that's cool.
That's so
I'm going to be able to
exciting.
hold a lightsaber that I made.
Yeah, that's nuts to me. Like, that's the dream.
Does that make me a Jedi?
Welcome to Creative Insanity. Creative Insanity.
Hey, I'm Servant. I am a rap artist, producer, and creative freelancer in Canada, and welcome to Creative Insanity. My guest today is the one and only Daniel Grove, a photographer extraordinaire based in San Antonio, Texas, who has me in complete awe. He is a family man. He is someone who knows how to hustle. He runs his own business. He's a busy dude. In his heart, he is a multi-talented artist who not only does photography, but he's gotten into videography, and he does Blender, VFX, and he does his own music. When I talked to Daniel, something I wanted to get to know more about was the balance between life and creativity, family life and creativity. But what we wound up getting into was so much more. It's honestly really tough for me to come up with a title for this podcast because there's so much general wisdom. Fun fact, I always edit my episodes, and it seems like every interview I have, there's always something I gotta pull out just to make it more cohesive and make it a better listening experience. But this is one of the rare examples where I literally didn't edit anything out. The conversation flowed so naturally. He was such a great guest to have on. If you need a general shot of encouragement or creative inspiration, this is the episode to listen to. Let Daniel Grove walk you through it. So Daniel Grove, the one and only, the mighty Daniel Grove, welcome to the podcast.
Please, just call me Daniel Grove the Mighty.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that you're here. I'm doing fewer and fewer of these podcasts these days because I'm getting really picky. I'm really just trying to talk to people I'm really interested in talking to. Not to say any of my previous guests haven't been that. It's just I had this hustle mentality before, like, man, I could talk to this person, and learn about this and learn about that. But when I sat back for a minute and really thought, who do I actually want to talk to? What do I actually want to learn? And who would really be interesting for me? Like, forget about the viewers, just for me. That to me, it all centered in on you for this conversation because you're doing a lot of things that I'd like to do. And I feel like there's a lot I can learn from you.
Cool. Well, ask away. I'm an open book.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, why don't you just tell me a bit about what you're doing now? Because when I met you, first of all, you had me on your podcast a while back. I met you through...
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I really loved it. It kind of what set me off on thinking like I could do a podcast maybe. But...
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, I know. I should be a little bit frustrated about that. But hey, it's learning. It's good. I like it. But I met you with the Lita Battle Angel. It was like a fan club group or something through Facebook that you had joined to kind of share some of your artwork. You had done some specialized photography for it. And I was just kind of sussing the situation out because I was working on my Alita Battle Angel project on the side. And then, you just sort of blew me away with your photography work. And where were you at there creatively, and where are you at now? Because you've been growing a lot.
Yeah, man, I wish I had snapshots of where I was at in each month or phase of my photography journey. I can't really answer. I don't remember exactly. But I mean, that photo shoot was just a passion project I did for fun because I love the cyborg art style. I love sci-fi. I love the movie. And my friend that I had photographed was in the movie, and she didn't get the prosthetic robot arm that she was, hinted at that Weta Digital was going to give her robot arm, but she didn't have enough screen time to justify the work, I guess. So she didn't get a cyborg body part. So I said, you know what? I'll take care of you. I can make that happen in Photoshop. So yeah, that's where that shoot came out of. And that's, that's what you saw, and that's how we connected. But I've definitely been growing a lot of side hustles that are still centered around my photography skill set. I'm doing a lot more videography lately, and really just establishing my brand that I'm like the go-to guy, for this type of creative, out of the box kind of work. And that shoot was a really good experiment too, to see if I could do it.
Yeah. Well, I think you could. And it's really interesting. You're very active on social media. It's like, you're kind of like an opposite version of me, where I very begrudgingly, if ever, put things on social media. I
overpost. Sorry.
No, but I don't mind because the content's actually good. So like, for the frequency that I check Facebook, there's always something new from you. And sometimes it's like, it's fun things that you've been doing with your family. You're a dad, you got a lot of kids, sometimes it's your photography stuff. Sometimes it's new projects you're working on. It's like you're constantly updating interesting things. Like you've got new lightsabers you're playing with. I find that stuff.
Or weird dreams. My weird dream posts.
Yeah,
those are fun.
The weird dream posts are cool. Yeah, I've seen a couple of those. It's interesting. Like, why do you do that? Why do you share so much?
I guess I share things that I would like to see. I want to know people. I'm like a super people person, maybe to the point of being nosy, but I've learned to not be like a rude nosy person. But inside my head, like I want to know everything about someone when I first meet them. And so I kind of assume, maybe I'm living vicariously through my viewers. And that I would like to see, what they're doing with their kids. I want to see what creative stuff they're proud of, what new achievements they've made, or if they're struggling with something, I want to know that too. So yeah, I just like to share stuff that entertains me, really. It's kind of like my art. Like I make stuff that tickles my imagination. It makes me happy as an artist. So I post things that entertain me, make me laugh, because I assume people like them, and they do. I have a lot of people that say, I look forward to your posts, and so kind of keeps me going.
Yeah, because you do get a lot of engagement with your posts because they are exactly that. They are fun. They are interesting and entertaining, and they kind of capture a lot of little moments and some of the bigger moments in life too. And it just makes me think like, what a great skill set it is to be able to do that. It's something I envy because I have this proclivity to not want to share. I feel like I kind of feel this tension between me and social media where I've leaned on it in the past as a kind of way to reach out when things are not great. As a teenager, I got into it and thought that you could just post whatever you wanted. And so it sort of turned into this negative thing for me. Like I would post something negative and get a reaction or a sympathy from people and attention from people. And it's not a mature, healthy way to do things. So as I've grown up,
it's not healthy.
I've stopped doing that. The odd incursion now and again. But it's like this sort of thing for me. It's like a portal that if I look at it, I don't have good feelings for that. But I get good feelings out of reading your posts and some of my other friends and whatnot.
Yeah.
But just for myself, it's really tough because I'm an artist and there are a lot of people who do want to know what I'm up to. They do want to see, what am I working on behind the scenes. And so it's kind of like I got to get over myself just to do it. But I guess maybe that's just an attitude. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I love attention. At least I'm humble enough to admit that I'm a little conceited. I don't know if that's what that is. It's half that, but it's half I know people like the stuff that I post, so I keep doing it. But I know I like attention. I'm definitely an extrovert. Would you consider yourself an introvert, extrovert, ambivert? What do you think you are?
It's a tough question. So most people who know me would say extrovert. I think extrovert is pretty fair, but I certainly do still need a bit of time to myself, just not a lot. I like talking to a variety of people. It's why I like doing the podcast because I get to talk to interesting people. Talking to my wife all the time.
Yeah.
If I get a day by myself, and we're both dads, so we know this doesn't happen much, but if I get that time, I basically will be really creative. I'll spend a couple hours doing something and then I'll either go for a walk or I'll call a friend and I'll talk to them for like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, and then I'm back at it and then I'm hustling for a while. It's kind of like I need to go into my cave and then I'll come out and be social and want to talk about it, but not the same dynamic when it comes to social
media. You sound like an ambivert, a little bit of both.
It could be. All the tests say very extroverted, but...
Yeah, I think it's definitely a personality temperament thing. We did a test at my church called the Enneagram, And it's basically like 9 basic types of your personality that, you know, you major in one, and then you kind of minor in a secondary number. So like I'm a 3 with like a wing or a side piece of, I think, 9. I don't remember what the descriptions of they all are, but I remember I think my main thing was a 3. And when I read it, I was like, yeah, that definitely fits my personality type. I'm a dreamer and a visionary, a go-getter, and try to make it happen kind of person.
Yeah, I've actually
So
heard of
yeah.
these Enneagram tests. I had another friend, Stacy Renard, who had told me about them, and she tried to call out my personality. And I think she was close because I did the test, but I don't remember the numbers. I just thought it was interesting, but it didn't really go anywhere for me. It's interesting that you're willing to admit that you like attention, because I agree with you. It's not a bad trait. I think it's kind of the way you are, and it's the way I am. It's like we're storytellers and we'd like to be at the campfire, telling a story, and we'd like to have some
Mhm.
people around the fire listening to us.
Yeah.
It's like a natural,
Yeah.
it's a natural disposition to want to have people paying attention to you, and people who aren't like that don't
Mhm.
understand it. It's not all bad
No.
to want some attention. It's, I think, the motivation for wanting attention. If you want attention just for the sake of attention, or if you're like yourself, you want the attention because you're posting things that people like. You're showing interesting things. You're making really, really wonderful artwork with your photography. And I mean, like, I've seen your posts too. Like, you're stopping people on your way home from something who are just doing an amateur photo shoot, and you're like, hey, why don't I jump in there and take a few real, professional photos if you're
That's
interested?
my extrovert right there.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Like, I've seen you do that for some people recently.
I feel like an introverted photographer, that would be their nightmare. Like that would be the word, walking up to a stranger, convincing them that they're not a creep, and convincing them that they're worth the time. Like that, I feel like that is the nightmare of an introvert photographer, and that's totally not me.
Mhm.
I like jumped out of my car and walked up to these girls on the side of the road. It sounds really shady. I did it very politely and carefully. I kept my distance, and I didn't approach them, in a weird way. But yeah, so that's just who I am. I couldn't miss that opportunity. My creative brain was like, you got to turn around, at least ask. If they turn you down, you can go home and know that you asked, but you got to ask. Got to try.
Yeah, that's really cool to me. Like, there's there's a few characteristics I can pull from that simple behavior. Number one, extrovert, right? So that you are not afraid to talk to people, and you like talking to people. You like situations involving other social beings. But number two is that you're generous.
Totally.
I think that you have this sort of, proclivity to give and to want to help people. And I think that's a very good trait to have. And then thirdly, you're very creative. The fact that you drove by, a couple of girls taking some amateur photos of themselves and that it got your creative brain thinking, it shows how much you're in that space and how a part of you that is. And I feel probably two ways about that. Part of me is like, I identify with that because I feel like I can be this in a similar way. But then I also feel kind of envious of that trait because I don't feel like I'm that way enough. I feel like I get caught in my head, or I'm not very generous, with my time. And so it's a good personal reminder to me when I see that. It says, man, this guy actually loves what he's doing, and he likes helping people, and he's not caught up in his head about it. He's not worrying, how is this going to look, or what's going to, like, he's just doing it because he loves it,
Well, if I let myself think too much about it, then yeah, I'd probably like just go home and just forget, try to forget about it. But these girls were wearing these beautiful yellow flowy dresses, and it was this beautiful green field. It was even windy and cloudy. That's like
Yeah,
perfect for photography. Cloudy is good soft lighting, and it was windy, so their dresses were flapping. I was like, oh, this is just like amazing.
Yeah, I should probably, while we keep talking, I'm gonna like pull up some of these photos because I can actually show them because it's a video
You should.
podcast.
Yeah, so I actually have a clip. If you need to, I'll send you the file. But I did a little, I'm calling them cinema portraits, where it's actually a video but of a portrait setup or a portrait framing of a person or people. And for these girls, I had them stand opposite, kind of like this, like, you know, one left, one right. And I just kind of slowly, what was it? Not pan, but I like shifted my camera slowly this way. And I shot at 120 frames per second. I'm super slow-mo on my camera, and it looks like dreamy, like a movie.
Like
It
butter.
was so cool.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've got your Instagram pulled up. Would that be a good place to start?
I think it's there. Yeah. Look for the girls with the yellow dresses. You can't miss them. Like mustard yellow.
All right. So I'm going to pull them up here so everyone can see. Mustard yellow. Here we go. Mustard yellow. So we've got these, just a couple. Those are fantastic dresses, number one.
Yeah. See, I'm just driving by. I'm like, what? Couldn't miss them against that green.
Yeah. Some great portrait shots here. Man.
And we did this in like 15 minutes. It was like super quick.
Yeah, I could tell. It's nice lighting up close.
Is that video? Is that slow motion video on my Instagram? I'm forgetting.
I'm just going through it. No, it's not on the Instagram, but you might have to send that to me.
On my Facebook.
But I mean, like,
yeah, I'll send it to you later.
Your photography is amazing. And if people can see that, you can't see what I'm showing, but it's got an image with compositive Sophie Grunge's katana from Mortal Kombat 11 here. And so you've got these extra effects and this person in the cave with the skulls and the blue light. I mean, it's fantastic.
It's all fake, by the way.
Yeah, well,
it's actually not fake. It's a 3D scan of a Russian mining cave. So it is real, but it's CGI. It's a 3D scan, and I added the skulls. I made the chains. I added the chains, and I think that's all I did to that one.
Yeah. Well, see, and I would have never guessed that. I thought you would have actually gone to some mummy's cave and taken that because that's how good it looks.
And we went to Russia.
Yeah. We got these lightsabers. Were these the ones? 3 quality combat colors, interchangeable with sound. You had done some lightsaber design work, no?
Yeah. So there's a guy here in Texas. It's really weird. We connected online, and then we discovered he was also in Texas, like hours away from me. So he owns Crimson Dawn sabers, or Crimson Dawn lightsabers. And they make, actually it's just Crimson Dawn, but they hand make custom lightsabers. And really good stuff, very affordable, beautiful designs. And so I got to chatting with him and I said, you know, I've always loved lightsabers. I've actually designed a number of lightsabers just for years. It's like a weird little 3D side hobby I've done. Some of them are for photo shoots. Some of them are just practice for my 3D program. I use Blender, by the way. I don't know how it actually happened, but I'm modeling lightsaber hilts for him now, and they're actually working on the first concept. I call it Concept 1 because it sounds like a cool car.
Yeah.
And it's getting close to manufacture or production time. So that's cool.
That's so
I'm gonna
exciting.
be able to hold a lightsaber that I made.
Yeah, that's nuts to me. Like, that's the dream.
Does that make me a Jedi?
I think so, because I mean, you'd have to get did you contribute the crystal? That's the question.
They make their saber.
They do make their own saber.
Oh man, no. I can charge the battery that's going to be inside of it. It's like the crystal.
Yeah, that's close enough, really.
The LED bulb, actually.
For modern terms. I'm still scrolling some of these images on the side. I'm going to bring in one here for people to see. This is a photo of a registered nurse that you just did. I think some graduation pictures
Melissa,
for her.
Yes.
Melissa, yeah. And so, yeah, just like some great, she just finished school and she's really creative, very clearly. And these defibrillator shots, that's incredible.
Yeah. So this is cool. Every picture of these, we could literally go through each picture and I could tell you a great story about each one, because it's all memories to me, and it's good memories. But that one with the shocking paddles, we were kind of do the consultation before the photo shoot, where I try to like draw out of them what they love, and like if possible, I'll draw out geeky, nerdy stuff I can, like work on. If they're not geeky or nerdy, that's fine. I'll find something cool to bring into the photo shoot. And so, and I know she's going to be a registered nurse. And I think they were looking through my cosplay sample album. I actually have a physical album with like my favorite cosplay stuff in there. And one was of a female Raiden cosplay who was like this. Raiden's all about lightning, right? So I had a bunch of lightning going in between the hands, and they were just like, wow. And something, I think it hit me. I was like, shock paddles. Like,
Yeah.
you always see in the ER movies where they go charge, they run together,
Yeah, the
charge. And I don't think
defibrillators.
that's actually how they work anymore. Yeah, I don't think that's how they really work in real life, but that's movie world. So I said, what if we did a photo of you with some defibrillators? Do you think we could borrow some from your school? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they're like, that would be so cool. So it turns out they couldn't get defibrillators. Not really surprised about that. So I made those in 3D.
See, that's
So
cool. So all of this
she's
made
actually
in 3D right there.
She's actually holding like a lipstick and like a lip gloss or something random just to give some space in her hand.
That's totally insane.
I did the rest.
Yeah. So yeah, you are like a top notch, like could be working for Weta type individual. And what you do is crazy. Like there's so much, like you just got to check out his Instagram if you guys are listening, because Daniel Grove Photo is his Instagram hashtag.
Yeah, Daniel Grove Photo. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and basically anywhere. He's on Facebook as well, because the quality is incredible of what you do, and I can see why you're sought out by cosplayers wanting to get extra special photos. And yeah, just bringing it back a bit to the psychology part here is like, it's crazy how high a level your work is, and how much you seem to like love it. Like it seems like a no-brainer for people, but for young people who, are creative, but they're struggling with like whether or not to pursue it seriously, or like they're caught in their headspace of depression of like, oh, I could write books, but I don't know how to make money doing that. It's like if you forget about the love, you're likely not going to get to a point that is as professional as you beyond your wildest dreams, unless you follow this sort of love all the way there, unless you actually enjoy it.
You'll burn out. Yeah. Yeah. Burnout is common in the photography world, as is in all creative branches, right? Musicians, writers, whatever, physical artists. I think burnout is common if you're doing something you're not super passionate about, or if you get sidetracked by the business, which may not be happening, and the profit, which may not be there yet. You're just riding on that, and you're just going on fumes, and you just get exhausted, and it's not fun. That's not your love anymore, and you'll burn out. It took me probably 8 years to get like decent at photography, where I was taking portraits that looked like how it should have looked in my head, and pictures I was proud of, and pictures that people would catch their eye and say, ooh, I'm going to write this guy and see how much he charges. Like good, decent portraits. It took me 8 years to get there. That's really long. I should have burned out like year 2. Most people do 2, 3, 4 years in. If you're not making good money, or if you're not making any money, or if you're not making good pictures that you're proud of, most photographers will just quit. And that's sad to me. I try to prevent that by, helping them out. But my passion, my love behind it just kind of drove me through that 8-year sludge of slow learning.
Yeah. In 8 years, I mean,
I found my passion.
That's amazing. And it's not as if that's the only thing you had going on.
No.
You've got a young family, right? Like there's other passion in your life too that has been keeping you busy. But yeah, it seems like you've so well fed your creative side all throughout. Tell me a bit about what that's like. How do you do that, being as busy as I'm sure you are? How do you keep it going?
I am addicted to efficiency and multitasking, maybe to an unhealthy level. It's just like my wife. It's like a thing where we both make fun of me about how I am so like into being efficient. Like I will do one thing with one arm and another with the other to do them at the same time. It's just how what I like to do. It makes me happy inside when I'm saving even half a second doing something. So where was I going with that? So I have to multitask, and I'm good at it sometimes, and other times I'm out of balance. I like the other day, it's been a really busy 2 weeks for me, just crazy busy. I've almost had to shoot, whether it's video or photo or something else, every night for almost 2 weeks straight, which is like unheard of.
That's awesome.
And it's been really fun. Not for my wife putting all 4 kids to bed at night when I'm gone, but it's been fun for me. So it's been busy, and a lot of people are seeing this high level online activity, and so I get more hits, I get more messages and more inquiries, right? Even just more comments, people that are curious about what's going on. And so because of that, I've been on my phone a little too much. So I haven't mastered this whole balancing family and balancing, self-owned business thing at all. I have hits and misses, and a few days ago it was definitely a miss. My wife was like, you can message them later. And in the back of my head, I was like, no, but then they'll hire someone else. But then I was like, you're right. Priorities. Family should always be first. And my business supports my family, but I have to find this tricky balance to where either I'm just doing family time during the daytime and I'm doing all my business and hustling at night, which is generally what I try to do. That's like the ideal, situation. But when I get a comment, an inquiry, or a message during the middle of the day, it's hard. I'll try to answer it when the kids are occupied.
Yeah. Well, it's your livelihood too, right? So it makes it tricky where I find the same thing. Like what I do is videography primarily, which I got into from music. It was like, making music videos for myself because I couldn't afford to pay people to do it well. So I just started to try to figure it out myself, and I'm still learning. I would consider myself probably quite amateur. But the thing is, I've gotten base level tools and learned to work with them. I got a little off track, whatever that thought was. But, since it's your livelihood, basically, you have to be like on the hustle in a way because you don't know when that next paycheck is going to come. And if you have like some regular clients, that's great. But then if it's looking dry, and I mean, like I was so busy, but one of my biggest clients has moved on, and now I've got this big gap that I need to fill. And it's like, hustle is an important skill and mentality that if you don't have it, you feel like your family's going to suffer because you're kind of, you're the man. You got to make some income. You got work to do. And that's the struggle for me, because you do want to kind of sometimes neglect the kids to focus on the business for the kids, for the sake of the kids. But I think the key here is probably just boundaries, good boundaries. Like you said, if it's working during the day, if you got to hold off on a couple hours, and if they can't wait a couple hours to hear from you and they're willing to move on that fast, then maybe that's not the right, maybe you wouldn't enjoy working with that person. Like, I don't know.
Yep. And to balance that, I agree with that. But the flip side of that coin is I have to say my wife has been very supportive, and she's been very understanding. So sometimes if I'm at home, like, and I have like, I can show my whiteboard over here. It's crazy. I got like 15 things that I need to finish. She's very understanding and supportive. So she'll take the kids out to the park, or she'll call up a friend and go hang out there for 2 or 3 hours because she knows that I'll be here working my butt off, getting stuff done. And she's been, she doesn't complain when I'm coming home late from a shoot. She knows that it's all for the goal, which is supporting the family and following my dream. And she knows it makes me happy, but she also knows it pays the bills. So there's that too.
That helps.
But yeah, having a supportive wife and or family or partner is like really big. If you have the opposite, it'll just kind of drain it out of you, and you got to plug that hole up real quick by something else. So you got to be really strong to counteract that. But I'm lucky I don't have to struggle against that challenge.
Yeah,
my wife is awesome.
That's great, and it shows. And I'm lucky as well. My wife is super supportive, and as well, she's on maternity leave right now because our youngest is 7 months or so. And in Canada here, we get these nice long maternity leaves, so we try not to take advantage of them. I know. But she's home watching the family, and I'm able to work. My studio's in the garage, and I'm lucky too. Just with the setup within this last year, I kind of became a freelancer full time, and having kids around is very distracting because and maybe more so for some people than others. I know for myself, I've discovered that I'm ADHD, and that's something that apparently I've been probably my whole life, and it's been undiagnosed, and it's extra challenging for me if people are like jumping in. It takes me like 25 minutes to get back to where I was mentally. So having some space without children is really good to get work done, but there's always going to be the cross, like the intersection where my wife is like, calls me up in the middle of a work day for me, and she's like, I need you to get in here. Like, the kids are driving me crazy. Like, please help. Yep. It's like, okay. So then I come in and tag. And then there's part of me that's like, if I was working a normal job, if I was working a normal job, I wouldn't even be here. But then at the same time, it's like, but I am here. So like, what a blessing it is that I can jump in and help her because she so willingly jumps and helps me too, Having a supportive wife is the best. And when you're a young creative person, there's also a myth, I think, whatever the field is, a lot of people think like you're not going to be able to make anything happen unless you remain single. Like you need to have all this time to do all these things. And I think that is so misdirected because having a family makes your life, it can anyway, make your life so much fuller. It makes your life richer in a lot of ways that it deepens your relationship with your creativity. And for me anyway, it made my time more precious, my free time more precious. So it's like, it made my free time more productive because I knew, I only have an hour and a half here. So it's like, I'm all
focused. No Facebook.
yeah, all focus, no Facebook. Exactly. And that was a really good thing for me too, because a lot of people, I know when I started coming out with music and whatnot, people were really surprised at the level of output I had. And particularly my single friends. And it was like, well, you've got so much free time. That's why you're wasting it. And I've got so little of it.
Take it for granted. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, but kids get older, it gets busier, and then sometimes work takes precedent. I've got my creative projects that have nothing to do with how I make money, but I want to pursue them anyway. And I'm just, I'm glad I'm in a situation where I can try to achieve some balance. And it's good to hear that you don't fully have it locked in, because that means you're human, and I'm like you then.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I'm definitely a hustling mindset kind of guy. With photography slowing down earlier due to COVID-19 here, I had to find alternate ways to make up for that lost income. So I was doing all kinds of stuff. Like the 3D design for the lightsabers was one of my like 7. I think I counted. There was like 8 different side hustles I was doing. One was the 3D design. I was making video. I made a video intro for another guy for his YouTube, which is 3D CGI as well. I taught high schoolers photography on Zoom.
That's cool.
Forgot what the other one was. It was just like a bunch of little odd jobs, and it just never stops in my head. It's always hustling. I forgot if it was you on Facebook or someone else asked about the whole hustling thing. And I gave an analogy that I kind of warmed up to over the years that I think I came up with. I don't know. But I feel like being an entrepreneur is and making your own business happen, make your own identity, establishing it, and making the content or whatever your product is like rolling a snowball. It starts out really small, and you pack it, and you're physically working labor to make it bigger and heavier and denser, just to keep it together. And eventually you can start rolling it around, and it gathers more snow. Well, the struggle of being self-employed and competition and supply and demand is like you're rolling up your snowball uphill. And it's really hard, but eventually you kind of get over the slope, and it will roll itself, and it'll gain its own momentum. But you'll never get over that hump where the gravity helps you if you don't do the pushing first and the building and the non-fun, non-pretty stuff that doesn't make a lot of money. So it's like you're investing and you're putting, I call it momentum. You're adding momentum to this thing that you're building, and eventually that momentum will carry you or carry itself. But you'll hit other upward slopes. It's not like one challenge. There's a challenge every week, every month, every year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it. You got to keep pushing and investing, but it will pay off later. And then you'll hit a new level. There'll be new struggles and new benefits.
Yeah. That's highly accurate for what I've experienced in my life as a creative person. It starts with just a lot of hustle for a lot of no money. You're doing a lot of stuff. I would say for myself, you said it took 8 years for you to learn how to, get to that level of photography that you really needed to be. And for me, I would say it was about three years as a producer, being able to, I've always been a composer, being able to like play piano and come up with tunes, but to actually produce in an intelligible way and mix and master. And I'm still learning lessons all the time with that, but to get it to a point where
you never stop learning that.
Exactly. But to get to a point where your average listener can put it on and then put on a track, on the radio and not be able to tell much of a difference whatsoever. To get to that point, those 3 years, man, I was working like every day. I was just like learning YouTube tutorials, trial and error, failure.
Awesome.
I'm like, what is EQ? Like, what the hell? Why is people EQing all the time? Like, I had no idea that you had to equalize frequencies, all these silly little lessons that you learn the hard way. But once you learn them, they stick, and there really is a snowball effect. You really do kind of, and for me, there was a snowball effect too. It kind of got to a certain point where I had all this skill set, no one to give me money for it, but then got the first client, I was pointing a camera, doing something, and he had seen my music videos before and he liked them. And he saw that I was doing the thing. I was just volunteering. And he was like, hey, like, I really want to do some videos like for some realtor work or whatever. Like, have you ever done that before? And I was like, no, but I can figure it out. I could totally do that. And like,
I'll fake it till I make it.
yeah. So there's a lot of that. And I mean, there's still that. I mean, one of my big clients here was like, she wanted to do like a bunch of live streaming stuff and she just couldn't find anyone who knew how to do it. And I was like, I'll learn. I'll figure it out. Like,
I can learn.
let me attack this. And problem solving I learned that was probably one of my greatest gifts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, making things happen and learning how to do a trade or like a minor, like a part of your trade is a big part of my story too. Because a lot of times I'll do photo shoots and either the client will come to me with an idea they have, and at first I push back. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Or, I know how to do cool stuff, but that is a little beyond my ability. Or it's going to take so many hours. I don't want to tell you yes because I don't want to do, because I know I can't charge you $2,000 for this one picture, but it's going to take me like 40 hours, 3D design, compositing, all that stuff, and the planning and the research. Like that's half of it. So I can't charge what I should. So at first I say no, but then I start to think, I'm like, all right, hold on. Let's just break this down, and I learn a new technique with every like major shoot I do. I learn something new. And it's like now I expect my my pushback, but then I know the next step is acceptance, and I go and figure it out anyway.
Yeah, that's handy to know that you're capable of tackling something you don't know how to do. I think that's another part of it is you kind of build up this repertoire of trial and error or trial and succeeding. Like you know that you can learn. And once you really know that in your bones, you don't get intimidated about problems the way you used to, right? Like you're able to, people can approach you like, hey, I'd like to do a photo like this and we need all these things going on. And you're like, well, I've never done it, but I can do that because I know that I'm capable of learning. And it's like, if other people have learned how to do it, this means that I can learn how to do it.
Yes. This is a really good discussion that I've had with my wife, time and time again. We have very different upbringings. I had a stable home. I like barely ever moved. My parents never divorced. I may have heard them fight one time. Very fortunate. My upbringing was very smooth. We weren't well off money-wise, but we had everything else.
Yeah.
And emotionally, though, my point is emotionally, I had a really good foundation for believing in myself. And I was, as a kid, as I was always an artist, I was always creating and making things, whether it was like Lego stuff or drawing. And then when we got a computer, I discovered MS Paint, and boy, I just took off with that. But I always believed in myself, and because of my childhood, because of my parents and the attitudes that they gave me, I always believed that I could do big things. And if I didn't know how, well, by golly, I'm gonna go and learn it, and I'll be the best at it that I can be. And then I'll have a new trick, a new tool in my belt. My wife is very different. She had a very unstable household. I mean, they were like pretty much homeless a few times, like shelters and just wild stuff. She dealt with so many things that I never even knew about as a kid. And she has also different temperament. So she doesn't believe in herself as much as I do. She has a different viewpoint of what she can and can't do. Now she's getting better lately because she just became a certified doula, which is like a birthing assistant. You kind of help the mom during the labor, help you have the baby kind of thing at home or in the hospital. So she's doing that. So she's achieving things, which is great. But it's just a different mindset of, can I tackle this mountain? For me, it was always a yes. For her, it was usually a little, disbelief or reluctance to try.
Yeah. See, and for me, I think I had a slightly different than the both of those. So my wife, she had in many ways a challenging upbringing compared to mine, and we feel, and I had a lot of stability. But the thing was, I was told, you ever see Fight Club?
No, I have not.
You have not? Okay.
I've done a photo shoot of Fight Club, but I haven't even seen the movie.
That's funny. Well, you got to see it. It's really quite good. There's this scene in Fight Club where Brad Pitt's character, he's got all these guys around or whatever, and they're a bunch of shirtless guys having fights or whatever. And it's kind of turning into a bit of a cult here, but he says this powerful thing where he's like, when we were kids, we were told that we were going to be movie stars. We were going to be, you know, like we were going to be at the top of the world, basically. We were going to be all these things. And you know what? We're not. We're just average Joes. We're this. We drive buses. We do like all these ordinary things. And that hit me really hard because I had this believe in me mentality too, but I think there was a bit of poison in that for my particular mixture. I had this, I believe, like almost like without question that on a subconscious level that I was going to be like some big star because I was very talented as a kid. And so I would, do something crazy on the piano and they'd be like, you're a piano prodigy, like, wow, like there's no end in sight. And there was a lot of that, whether I was conscious of it or not, was going to my ego. It was kind of giving me this sense of like, I could be anything. I could be a great actor and like I loved acting and I could, and I don't think
I could never fail.
Yeah, I could never fail. And so then coming out of high school, barely by the skin of my teeth, I came out of high school and I spent a couple years just working in the real world and realizing that I actually have to work for any of that to become even a possibility. Like I have to really, really work. Like I might be talented as all hell, but if I don't have the drive to grow, that biblical metaphor of the talents, right? Like to invest these talents so that they can grow. If I don't have that mentality, they're not going to go anywhere at all. And so I feel like it was never any parent's intention or the world's intention, but I always just felt like, mine were the days of American Idol and all these things that it just sort of it seeped into my brain a little bit of a bit of the poison in with that mentality. And I think a lot of my 20s were coming around to the understanding and realization that success isn't always that. In fact, most often it is not that kind of stardom or these great big mountains. But in many ways, it's like doing something satisfying, creative, and interesting that you love and that brings value to your life and maybe spills over to some people around you. And that was a tough, painful lesson, for me because
reality check.
Yeah, reality check. And I still kind of, it circles back to the social media thing for me. It's like if I'm posting something on social media, if it doesn't do well, if not a lot of people care, I can't help but feel sad about that. And I wish I didn't. I wish it was just like, these are just numbers and it doesn't matter at all and keep pushing. But there's a bit of resistance there for me and it's this kind of struggle. But the plus is that does fuel a lot of creativity. A lot of my angst, for instance, about this process, it kind of makes its way into my music as a rap artist. And I feel like there's value there. So it's not as if I'm struggling for nothing,
That's cool. That's very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot going on in your head, when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. It's a lot of psychology, I think.
Yeah,
and upbringing.
And that's what interests me. Like the concept of the podcast in general is like, how do you stay sane while being creative? Because for me, I didn't always think those two things went hand in hand. But as I matured, I've realized that when they are hand in hand, they're so much better, both of them. Like as a hyper creative individual, you can't help but be creative. So if you stymie that process, you're hurting yourself. And no matter if you tell yourself like, oh, I just need to focus on real life and not that, and you think like you're doing something good for yourself, if you're not being creative as a creative person, you're just adding to the problem. And I feel like you're kind of creating that insanity, But that's why I wanted to talk to you.
Artists are a weird thing.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The artist brain is such a strange mixed mash of problems, but also strengths. It's like a combination of like insecurities and wanting to be validated and wanting attention, which I guess could be seen as negative, things. But then there's like the positive things, like you have skills, you're creative, you see things differently. Like it's like the mixed mash of these, good and bad together makes this like artistic explosion of creativity.
Yeah, another thing I think creatives have that a lot of people wish they had is vulnerability, the ability to be vulnerable. Because that's something that I know for myself, mostly comes quite natural. Like I don't like to be vulnerable all the time, but it's like I can't help in my music but to just spill the deepest part of my soul
Yeah.
into it. And it comes out and it's like, well, if someone's going to hear it, they're going to get to see a side of me that's quite vulnerable. But I know people have approached me a lot in the past admiring that trait because it's not something they feel they have. A lot of people are very afraid to be vulnerable. And so with me not feeling like it's a virtue on purpose, but more virtue by accident, I happen to be quite okay with being vulnerable. That's a cool thing too about being creative. Something you don't think about is people who are willing to put things out there can shed light on things that people who aren't willing to shed light on can then get some understanding. And that's cool.
Yeah, I think non-creatives, if they come to terms with it, I think some of them may be jealous that we have a way to express these inside things, that they can't just go out and talk about your insecurities. It's be kind of weird and awkward depending on the concept, the context. But we have this excuse of art where we can get this stuff off our chest, and we can express things, and we can relate to people. We can like tell our deepest, darkest, failures, or encourage people to reach for the stars. And it's something that non-creatives may not have an outlet in the same way that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, is I think we both kind of naturally come into a distinction between creatives and non-creatives. And I know that that's kind of a gray definition, but it's like, I guess how I would define it is a creative person, or at least a hyper creative person. They're the kind of people where they literally can't be alive unless they are filling that cup of creativity or draining it, whatever it is. Like unless they're participating in the photosynthesis process of developing and making something, taking the light that's given to them and putting it somewhere else, they literally just can't be alive. And if they are, they're a shell of a human. That's what I find. Like there's certain people who are just like that. That's me too. And that's me too. And I would say that's easily most of the people that I have on this podcast are very creative people who are just, you don't know what to do if you weren't creative. Like, I feel
I get bored. I get unsatisfied.
Like, do you feel like if someone said you had no choice but to just watch television shows and you couldn't be creative, like how long could you pull
love television
that off?
shows.
I do love them too. I get a lot of inspiration.
How long?
But how long could you do it?
Yes. It depends on what the shows are. No. Yeah, that's a good question. It's like, how long can you survive off of not doing what your creative outlet is, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And not long. I would have to like leave part of myself behind to adapt. I would have to let go of a big part of my soul and who God made me to be as a creative and as a creator and as an artist. I've found, and my wife knows this, that I'm not satisfied with life. It sounds I don't deal with depression, thankfully, but I don't feel satisfied with life, or I'm not happy when I'm not doing something creative. And during slow times where I don't have business, I'll still be doing something creative. I'll be learning more 3D stuff, or I'll be learning, re-editing old photos, or learning a new trick of the trade, more tutorials, whatever. I'm always doing something to fill in that gap. And yeah, I'm just kind of a little bit of a shell of a human, I guess, like you said.
Yeah.
When I don't have that thing going on.
Yeah, and I think that people don't. So you're very extroverted. I'd say I'm quite extroverted. Do you ever feel like people don't understand you as a creative, or I wonder if maybe you do feel understood?
I don't know either way. I wish I had a great deep answer for that one, because that's a great question. But I can't think of any times where people don't understand me. Maybe it's because I have a very clear art form. I don't have an abstract type of style.
Right.
My stuff's pretty, like on the nose. Like it's very clear, like what I'm doing, the mood, the character, the world that I'm in with my photography. It's pretty easy to understand, I think. So I don't feel like I'm ever misunderstood. And a lot of times people who may not understand me, that's why they're hiring me, because I have the vision, or because I have the thing that whatever I'm going to make is they know they're going to love. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Good question though. Sorry.
No, I'm kind of thinking about how I might answer it too. It is, sometimes there are questions that they're good, but the answer is mysterious in a way. I guess, what the hell was the question? Is my ADHD
Well,
kicking in?
let me ask it to you then. So you being a white rapper, do you
Ah,
feel like people, and with your style being aggressive and fast at times, do you feel like people misunderstand you or think that you're faking or being weird? Like what has that been like?
oh, see, that is a good question. I would say, I would say basically, I don't feel understood if I'm not able to express myself. And it's like a rare person who can listen to my work. You know, I'll pour every ounce of my soul into a song sometimes, and someone can listen to it, and based on their feedback is like the level of which I feel understood. And there's, you know, you get a lot of like, oh, good job, awesome, yeah, cool beat. Like you get a lot of maybe simple feedback sometimes, but when someone's like able to connect the
Surface
dots,
level.
yeah, when they can connect to it in a deep way, that's when I kind of feel understood, because they're like, oh, you came at it trying to tell this sort of story, and that's why the ending, you know, has some power to it, because, you know, you flip this on its head. But when people are able to, and maybe one of the best examples of that for me was the Alita Battle Angel thing that I did, bizarrely, like just a goofy project where I thought I'm just gonna be creative and not care two pence what people think about it. You know, people all around the world, though a few enough as it is, still a great handful, have given me very deep, thoughtful comments on that. Like, able to be like, man, like you understood the character on such a deep level. And because that's when I feel understood. So, like, I think one of the projects I feel the most understood about was through this Alita Battle Angel thing. Because of, if you just look at the comments, people are able to articulate an understanding of the work, which means that they are understanding what I was thinking when I was trying to put it together. But being like a white rapper, for a long time, no, I certainly didn't feel understood. People still to this day, like the way I talk and stuff, people are like, wait a minute, you rap? Like they don't believe it. It seems kind of a strange thing. And it's always kind of
Stereotypes.
yeah, it's a fun party trick to pull on people where you're like, yeah, I'm a rapper.
Oh,
I've got
yeah.
like 19 music videos. I take it actually pretty seriously. And people are like, what? Yeah, I've collaborated with Afro.
That's like
Oh,
me. I totally get that. So in high school, and even a little bit after high school, I did a lot of breakdance. I
oh,
did a lot
really?
of hip hop, pop and lock, and stuff like that. B-boy move, yeah, b-boy dancing, and I was really good at it. And so it was like you said, it was a fun party trick to, or did you know? Or someone, well, usually I don't, go boasting about it, but someone like my wife or someone will bring it up,
Yeah.
like, Daniel used to breakdance in high school, and I'm like, oh, here we go again,
Yeah.
It's fun to just say, oh, here's this nice stereotype. I'm just gonna push it over and let it crack on the ground.
Yeah. And what's
Screw
interesting
that.
is like, in my case, I know that I will sometimes see people not act, they don't know what to do with it because they have a preconceived notion, right? Where they're like, white, small town Alberta rapper, not possible. Like they have this very clear, very clear mindset of like,
Not possible.
yeah. So then when it kind of reality confronts them, like, actually, I am an artist. I'm a rap artist, and I'm a producer as well, and I do my own beats, and I've collaborated.
Deal with it.
Yeah, and it's like, this is who I am. You can almost sometimes, for certain kinds of people, just see them not know what to do with it, that they'll just change subject. They'll be like, oh, okay, all right. Anyway, like, it's like they don't know how to interpret it. Whereas for other people, they're like, whoa, really? Like, that's really cool. So it's a cool
Yeah.
process, and it's even cooler when you're doing stuff, But the understood thing, I think on a deep level, I never truly feel totally understood. And that's probably a good thing, but maybe a bit selfish. I don't know. Part of me thinks like, can we not understand other people? Can we not step into their shoes? I try to do that with art. I try to tell stories. Can somebody not have some strong insight into my character, being able to, if they were just paying attention? And I think the answer is, yeah, I'm sure they could. If you were to pay attention to my actions, my music, my art, my family, you would gain a lot of insight and be able to understand me. So whether or not, if I feel like no one ever understands me, that isn't necessarily reality, It's kind of like, it's a dichotomy, I guess, where I can feel misunderstood, but I don't know the reality. And the reality is maybe some people do understand me. Maybe my wife, maybe some people who are very close to me. And so for me to kind of go on with
Yeah.
this sort of fake attitude of like, I'm never understood, I feel like it's kind of self-aggrandizing. It's almost like I'm too special for people to ever get any insight into my
I'm
character.
so far above you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you hear people talk like that all the time, like no one understands me ever. And I always think like, well, I don't know. I feel like if you're open enough, people will understand at least.
Yeah, maybe they need to work on their communication skills. If no one
That could
understands
be.
them, well, how are you communicating?
Yeah. And that's what's cool about being an artist in our forms, which they are different, but is communication. That's basically all it is you're putting ideas, thoughts, something together.
Yeah. Emotions.
Emotions, yeah. And then people can read it, listen to it, experience it, see it, and it speaks to them, That's, I think, one of the highest praise, one of the highest forms of praise is if someone looks at a great piece of art and they say, this just speaks to me. It's like, yeah. And that's what I want to do with my work. I want to communicate. I want people to, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you,
I totally feel that too. Art is all about that communication of a human story or an emotion or an experience. And this is a little off track, but since you're a musician, you might appreciate this. I like rap, but I don't like rap or any genre that I don't know what they're saying. It's like if the syllables that are supposed to be in English are going in one ear and out the other, I'm not gathering anything from it. I'm like, this frustrates me. I got to understand. Like, I want you to communicate to me, artist. Come on,
Yeah.
So I love I like when if there's words involved. I like when the communication is clear. I also love instrumental music because then it's like this more universal language.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm not saying this story happened with this girl and it was good or this turned out bad. It's like instrumental music is just like this beautiful, I don't know, it's like this universal language of emotion, and you can make your own story in your head. When I edit music, it's funny. I'll listen to music that matches what I'm editing. So if I'm editing sci-fi stuff, Star Wars or sci-fi, video game characters, whatever, or if I'm making sci-fi art in Blender, I usually listen to stuff that sounds like the Tron Legacy soundtrack or synthwave or trance. I really like trance. It's just very beautiful and melodic and simple. But if I'm editing fantasy, or anything in that fantasy genre, I'll listen to like epic battle mixes, just like fantasy music. There's so many good continuous mixes on YouTube. I don't know who these producers are, but they're making some amazing stuff, and like cinematic sounding stuff. I love that. So music is a really big part of my creativity, actually.
Yeah, well, and I know that you make your own music, like you said, and sometimes the videos you put on Facebook and stuff, you're like, music's mine too. And it's like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, go ahead.
I have a similar story. I think if I remember your story right, I got into making music with Fruity Loops, didn't we all? Way early on, like middle schools, and I discovered techno, and then I found out that I could make it with programs, and that's where it all started. And so I love making music. I actually went to college for music ministry. And I'm a musician alongside my visual artist side, and it's beautiful being able to make music to express other types of emotions, and then they can support my visuals, which is really fun. Combining the two together, it's just like awesome. I wonder. Not only did I not have to pay copyright, it's that just too, all my vision behind it.
I wonder if you have similar aspirations as me then, because I think we're both like a lot of people who are hyper talented. Like you have. Or hyper creative, you have multiple disciplines with some fluency, right? And some areas that maybe you're not so fluent. I wonder if you have similar aspirations. So I'm just going to throw this out there. Do you also want to make a movie someday where you compose the score?
Oh, totally.
And you film it, you direct it, you write it, maybe
everything.
Yeah, maybe you have a supporting role or something in there too, like you get in there and act.
I'll do the VFX and the color grading.
See that? Yeah.
And the camera.
That's one of my things.
I pretty much have all the skill set to do that.
You could. Yeah, it's a shame we're not neighbors. We'd be making a movie right now, I'm sure.
Oh man, be dangerous.
That's why I find, like, I have friends in Edson, and it's a very small community. It's about 10,000 population. I am I'm a 2 hour drive from the nearest city, which is Edmonton. And I think that's about 1 million or so. You're where again? I know you're in Texas, but you're in like
Yeah, I'm in San Antonio. I think we're like 3 million. It's pretty big.
Yeah, see, that's
It's
huge.
one of the biggest cities.
3 times the
It's
size
pretty
of
big. So
Edmonton.
I think it's
Wow.
it's massive. And I grew up in a neighboring city, New Braunfels, which is now probably, I don't know, 100,000 or more. So I'm used to the medium to large cities. It's just normally hearing like a 10,000 community is just like crazy to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would be like.
Well, it's interesting. Like we still have most of the things towns need to have. Like it's not as, I don't know. I grew up in the neighboring town actually, which is also about 10,000. So that's where I spent most of my childhood growing up in Hinton. They all sound the same. Hinton, Edson, Edmonton. But Edson is Edson's where I live now. It's where I get a lot of work. My wife works here and close to family. And there's so many nice people in a small town. And I'm starting to finally meet some people, and like there are creative types. I find that there's just this kind of trend where people are in a small community. If they're really hyper creative, it's like they're attracted to the cities, at least in Canada. It's like you're going to go to Toronto, you're going to go to Vancouver, Calgary. Like there's places where you're going to find more like-minded people.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, but there are hyper creatives in the small community, and I've met some, but it's kind of a different animal because there's not as much venue to do creative things. Like I have my home studio. Well, yeah, I have my studio, and on the other side of this wall there is more studio space, and I'm setting it up with some green screens. And it's like, this is a huge oddity to have in a small town. Normally you'd have to go to the city for that kind of thing. But I was very much like, well, I'm just going to make it happen wherever I am and do the best. But yeah, it's not like you can go out and, like, oh, I'm just going to go to the open mic night or whatever. And we do have that in the next town. They have an open mic night, but yeah. And that's actually where I've met, now I'm thinking about it, a lot of great singers, a lot of like local singers, teachers, people like with real jobs who just have fantastic skill sets in the creative sphere. And I try to collaborate with these people a lot of times. I've featured singers who don't have any kind of artist movement for themselves, but they're just really talented. And I like to work with people like that too, It's kind of
You should make a Facebook group community for them. That'd be cool.
Maybe.
Get them all in one place.
It's not a bad idea. Like you got to live in a small town and you got to be creative. Something like that. Yeah, maybe that exists. But though we come from very different worlds, like I recognize in what you're doing with your work, a very kindred spirit. And I think that's why I look up to you so much and why I'm always kind of want to know what you're doing. And it's been really interesting too, because when I saw you, you weren't doing videography, you were doing mostly photography. And I see you kind of branch out and grow and develop in this skill set. And I feel like when I met you, I was more just music, and now I'm in like videography as well.
We're going through different growths and phases and new expressions.
Yeah. So I feel like we're kind of wrapping this up because there's a lot of good juice here, and I don't want the conversation to be too long because I don't want it to be like a Joe Rogan interview where I have to like listen to it over a course of 6 days,
I can't listen to that guy. It's too long. I can't do it.
If he's got the right guest on, like if he's got someone real interesting and they pop up or something, I can do it. But it's like, it takes me a week or whatever. I'll be listening just in chunks here and there. And most of the time I'll lose the thread halfway through because they're just so long. But I wonder, like, my audience is actually mostly creative type people because that's kind of, my audience is me. And I think people like me who are trying to be more creative and kind of want that to be a center part of their life. At least I think for most of the listeners that I've talked to. Knowing that, what kind of advice might you have for them? What's something that in your journey of life that maybe we haven't talked about, you can impart a bit of wisdom, and I'll let you kind of have the final point here.
Oh man, put the spotlight on me.
Something.
So
something.
The question is advice for creatives
Yes.
For what exactly? Like
Just general creative
general?
advice
Okay.
to stay sane, or how to stay
Yeah.
sane, or
Okay.
something like
So
that.
for me, Facebook groups have been a big part of my growth. I came across a few photography Facebook groups that just blew my mind, and really helped me see that success was possible. And I think that can apply to any creative outlet, whether it's a group of musicians. I'm also a member of a big group for Ableton music producers. And I don't really actively make music, but finding a group that, caters to what you want to learn is really big. Um, Another thing, aside from the online community, which is great to have, unless you have local community people that are into the same things. Another thing that would be good to do is to ask yourself why you're doing what you want to do and what your goal is. Like for myself, my photography passion, my goal is to make memories that are going to last a lifetime. Um, and then if it's a creative, like a cosplay shoot, then my goal is to make images that no one can get anywhere else. And, images that will transport the viewer to another world, or another story, or put them in someone else's shoes and make them think, what would it be like if I was this underprivileged person on this other country or on this other planet? Like, what would the future be like? Can we make it good or bad? So that's my goal with my creative stuff, is to make you think and to make you feel. So ask yourself why you're doing what you're doing, and where do you want to be, in 5 years? And then what do you need to do to get there? Do you need to learn marketing? Do you need to go to school for a business degree? There's no shame in that. In fact, a lot of photographers fail, a lot of creatives fail because they don't have any business knowledge at all. They're just an artist. They're not a business person. And that it hurts them very badly. And the photographer, if you get a photography degree, they don't teach you business. They don't teach you how to price yourself, or how to do cost of doing business, how to pay taxes. You don't know the money stuff when you get out of college for photography, and that's a shame. And I'm sure it's probably the same for, other creative outlets too. So if you need to go and learn marketing or business stuff or money stuff, then do that. If you need to go and learn the technical side of your art, you need to learn the technical side of how to be a photographer because you're not technical, then do what you got to do to invest in yourself. It might cost money. It might take a few years to get there, but you got to put stuff into you so you have something to pour out, and maybe just to equip yourself to have the tools to pour out, whatever that is that you want to make. And I guess when it comes to money, don't undervalue yourself. You need to realize that not every client or job or gig is for you. It's okay to say no to 9 gigs so that you get that 10th one that is willing to pay you full price, because they know what you're doing is worth that money. And it's going to be a customer you're going to love working with. There's so many customers that you don't want to work with because they don't value you. They want more and more and more, and fix this, fix that, do this. And they're not going to pay you more for it because they feel like they want to get their monies out of you. It's just not, it's a very one directional kind of thing. And it's not fair to you as an artist. So know your time, know your worth, and, charge what you're worth. And also get someone to mentor you. Don't be a lone wolf. That was a big thing for me as well, is get someone that's better and that's friendly and that has achieved something you want to achieve. There's, in the photography world, there's so many different types of photography. I'm not going to mentor under someone that does, I don't know, newborn photography, because I'd like that. I'll do that, but it's not my goal. So find someone that is in your creative world, or your creative industry rather, that has achieved or is doing something you want to be in 5 or 10 years, and see how you can learn from them, whether you're assisting them for free, whether you're, just doing odd jobs for them, paying for lessons, whatever. Yeah. Having someone to mentor you is really huge too. Because, you need the wisdom of someone who's been through it already, and you can't figure it out all on yourself, on your own.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
bunch of random things there.
yeah. Well, they're all connected, and that was all very good. And not enough people
Thanks.
really think of the why. Like you said, seems like you've sort of answered like the wow, the why, the what, the how, and the who. Like you even need mentorship. It's kind of a good way to think
Yeah.
about it. But I would just encourage.
And the win is right now. Just do.
Yeah, exactly. So I would encourage my listeners to be like me right now and think about the why. Think about why you're doing what you're doing. And that's the root of everything. I would 100% agree. Because if you're trying to do it, if you want to be famous, for instance, if that's your why, maybe you'll reach the end of that rainbow, but it's going to be it's going to be so unlikely that the journey is going to suck. And you know what? Your journey might not even end there. It probably won't. So it's like, if your why is be famous, well, then just try to maybe focus on YouTube videos that are like high viral. Like there's different ways to try to, let's say, get well known. But if your goal is like, I want to make meaningful content, then you need to learn how to communicate that, right? And follow the steps of the journey. So yeah, Dave, that's a great way to end it. Call you the wrong name. Daniel.
It's okay.
I really appreciate having you on my podcast. This is really good for me. I really need to think about all this kind of stuff, so I'm happy to talk it out with you. And I hope I didn't take too much airtime because I was trying to hear more from you.
I've been looking forward to this since we talked about this a while back, and when we set a date, I was like, oh, it's gonna be so fun. Oh, I don't know what we're gonna talk about, earlier on, but honestly, we could have talked about so many things. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Our love of music, our visual art, our faith. Like, there's so many things we could have we talked about for an hour or two. So I really enjoyed this. It was super fun, and the why of this hour and a half ish is I hope that it inspires someone out there. I hope that it kind of pushes you over the ledge to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I hope as well.
Gives you something to think about.
Mm-hmm. I hope me mostly.
So thank you.
That it moves me, and then everybody else that it moves. Yeah. No. Thanks, Dan. Talk to you later, okay? Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you found any of this valuable, please consider subscribing, recommending this to a friend, or leaving a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you happen to be listening. If you watch this on my Servant YouTube channel or Facebook page, please leave a comment and share. I love to hear from my listeners and learn from them. Learn more about me at www.servant.com. That's SRVENT.com. Thank you again for your time. Now go be creative and sane.